Welcome to episode 12 of the Black and White Bistro, where black and white photographers come to grow, share, and get inspired. Thank you for joining us today. I'm the creator and host of the Black and White Bistro show, DavidLPayne, and we're proud to introduce you today to a very special black and white photographer who makes his home in the UK, Paul Reid.
Hi everybody, and thank you so much for having me on the Black and White Bistro. My name's Paul Reid and I'm a professional photographer. I've been interested in photography for what seems like forever. Since I was a child and I found a camera in a drawer at home. It was one of my father's cameras and I started to use that and I realised I had this passion for black and white photography. I started to develop and print my own work. I came up through the film era. I still use a little bit of film now too. I just absolutely loved black and white photography. It was my favourite. I barely took colour photographs back then. As time went on, I decided this is what I want to do for a living. I want to do amazing monochrome images and I want this to be my profession. Unfortunately, what happened as I developed as a professional photographer, I started to do more of what the clients wanted rather than what I actually wanted. And what happens there is if you don't, go with your own passion for photography and then just do what other people want, then your interest can really go down with something that you were so passionate about in the first place. So I was doing a lot of color photography and I was using cameras that I really wasn't that happy with. And that went on for years and years. And I never really, became as good a photographer as what I wanted to do during my childhood. Now, a big event happened in my life and it was the death of one of my best friends. And sometimes it takes a big thing to happen to make you realize that you're on the wrong path. And that's what happened with me. I realized that all my hopes and dreams as to being this great monochrome photographer, that had really gone by the wayside. And I knew that I needed to do something about it and get right back into monochrome photography again. I went all in and I bought a Leica Q2 monochrome, which only shoots in black and white. I wanted the best monochrome photographs that I could possibly get, and this seemed like the way forward for me. And with this new outlook on life, I was looking at the world in a completely different way. What followed from that was me producing photographs that I was really proud of, images that I was so happy with that I started to enter competitions and things. Magazines were getting in touch with me and asking if I would put my photographs in their magazines, and I got the front cover of a number of different magazines. Not only that, I won a lot of those competitions. These days, I hold workshops and I mentor people in monochrome photography, and I've got the best career satisfaction that I could possibly have. And that's all because I followed my true passion for photography. You get to tell stories, fact and fiction. You get to document things. You get to capture moments. What a wonderful, wonderful thing photography is. And monochrome photography will always be number one. And thank you so much for having me on the Black and White Bistro.
Many thanks, my friend. Now, let's enjoy the first artist-selected image from Paul as he shares the story behind it in his own words.
This photograph, titled Solitary Justice, shot on my Leica Q2 monochrome, part of my Lonesome Underground series, a series of compelling characters shot on the London Underground. This is my style of candid street photography. I guess these days you would call it documentary street photography, all about the people rather than anything modern and clever. There's so much I love about this photograph. I had been riding the tube for hours back and forth, just hoping for a compelling subject. Sometimes I've spent all day doing this, only to go home with absolutely nothing. This day was different. I noticed this police officer waiting for the train. I ran as fast as I could to hop on the same train as him before it moved away, and I placed myself standing as near as I could without getting noticed. I glanced down at my screen to check the composition, but I did not lift the camera to my eye. Once in position, I pretended to look elsewhere whilst I took 2 or 3 shots as he looked almost posed for this photograph. It's an image I will always be proud of, good strong blacks and whites, and the look on his face open to interpretation. This photograph was shortlisted for the British Photography Awards, and it was also awarded a Leica Master Shot. Now, it's printed along with a number of other Lonesome Underground photographs and ready to be exhibited. No distraction of colour here, it's just all about the subject. A timelessness not possible with colour photography. He sits here on one of the busiest underground systems, yet there's a loneliness about someone in this authority.
And now, for the first time on the Black and White Bistro show, we present to you our live Zoom interview with Paul Reid as he shares his answers to our questions and provides personal insights into his black and white photography journey. Today's a very special day for us here at Black and White Bistro. We are proud to welcome to the show Paul Reid, professional black and white photographer, workshop trainer, and creator of a very successful YouTube channel. Paul, thanks for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Paul, how do you make your black and white photography stand out in a world where, thanks to a smartphone, everyone seems to be a photographer these days?
Yeah, I mean, I make sure not to follow any trends or anything like that and stay consistently true to a timeless style of shooting. I take inspiration from old movies, art, and the old masters of photography. I mean, the other thing as well, everybody may have a smartphone and that they may be taking photographs, but a lot of the time, unlike a photographer, they will see something and take a photograph of it without really kind of thinking what else. They maybe see the Eiffel Tower or something like that, and then they'll just take a picture of something like that, but they don't think what else. They don't build a picture. So everybody may be a photographer, but as photographers, we're always thinking about what else.
You mentioned that you look at some of the great photographers of the past. Is there a photographer in particular that inspired you the most?
Yeah, and it's an unlikely one, really, because there's so many great photographers. And actually, the one that inspired me the most wasn't a street photographer. In fact, they take photographs nothing like what I take. And the photographer is called Ellen von Unwerth, and she's actually a fashion photographer. But she was the first photographer that really got me excited about telling stories with black and white photography. And she cared more about, about the emotional content of photography rather than it being technically perfect. She had high contrast, grainy black and white photography, while everybody else was striving for perfection. Everybody was, moving to medium format photography at the time, but she was taking pictures with 35 millimeter. And I bought one of her photo books. And there was hardly any words in the book, but I just absorbed all those images. I was very young at the time, and it was just amazing. I learned more from that book, just looking at all those photographs than any photography magazines of the time.
Wow. How photo books are something that have kind of fascinated me. And I got one of Sebastião Salgado.
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah.
Oh, I look at those and part of me is thinking, I'll never shoot like this. And then there's this other voice on the other side, the devil on this shoulder going, you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that inspiration piece. So you think photo books are really a good investment for someone who's looking to improve?
I do, definitely. And for me, it's just filling your mind with just really great images. And what that does is you become a sum of all of the things that you've seen, whether that's, it could be anything, but for photo books, you're just filling your mind with great photography. And that then goes into your mind and it becomes easier for you to compose images just very quickly. You don't know why something seems to balance right whenever you pick up your camera and put the viewfinder to your eye, but it's because you've seen so many great images and so many great compositions that things just become natural to you. But the only way to do that is fill your mind with really good photography. The worst thing that you can do is fill your mind with rubbish photography, stuff that I guess, sometimes you get a lot of stuff that would come up on Instagram and things like that. And not all of it is any good. And I would say, fill your mind with great photographs from great photographers, and books is a really great way to do that.
This photograph, titled The Bairn and the Barn, it's a portrait of a young boy in Scotland that I noticed during a wedding I was shooting. This image still teaches me a lot, how simplicity can be powerful in a portrait. The timelessness to this photograph is something I still strive for in most of my photography. This would not be the same image in colour. It could have been taken decades ago or yesterday. This is one of the many strengths of monochrome photography. This one is almost like a still from an old movie. Portraits for me have three main elements. Subject. The subject must be compelling. They must hold the attention of the viewer because there's nothing else to go on. Lighting. For me, the eyes must be well lit. This enables the viewer to get lost in the portrait, to imagine the thoughts and to connect with the subject. And background. The background for me must complement the subject. There must be clear separation, and in this case, a background that leads to the subject. If any one of these elements were not there, then this portrait would not be as good as it is. This photograph was shortlisted for Portrait of Britain and featured in the book. It's featured in numerous magazines and won a Leica Mastershot Award. This was one of the first images that I was 100% happy with. I was so happy with this photograph that I printed it as a platinum palladium print, and I'm still mesmerized by this young boy's presence today.
We're back with Paul Reid again. Paul, you're known for your black and white street portraits. When you ask strangers to pose for a quick portrait, how do you form a connection so quickly with them in order to get the best portrait?
So I think we can form connections with people very, very quickly. The people that I photograph, I've already been drawn to them somehow. I've already seen them, and maybe it's how they look, how they dress, and I already kind of feel somehow connected to them already. And then because I shoot with a 28mm lens, after talking with them, that's very close to the subject. You can't help for it to be an intimate portrait with a 28mm lens, and it doesn't seem like it should be a portrait lens. But what I find is that whenever you're using something and you're that close to the subject, there's no escaping this kind of bubble that you're in with the subject, and they can't escape you because you're so close to them.
You find that the 28mm can work well for a portrait. I mean, I see many street portraits. I love one of the ones that you've picked to show us today, the Bobby sitting in the tube.
Yeah.
That's all with a 28?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think the maximum focal length that I would ever use for a portrait would be 50mm. 28mm just feels right to me, to do with, it also looks more dynamic. I find sometimes that with focal lengths, certainly above 50mm, it tends to really get a lot flatter.
Yeah.
And whereas with a 28mm, I don't know, it seems to kind of suck you in to the photograph just by the way it looks. It has a very dynamic feel to it.
You've been lucky enough to fulfill your dream of being a full-time photographer. The creative muse has this perverse way of abandoning photographers from time to time. How do you keep yourself consistently motivated, even when the creative muse is on vacation?
I constantly look for inspiration from other artists, and that is not just the old masters of photography, but also new photographers as well. And I make a point of, trying to discover inspiring black and white photographers, old and new. And I also set myself goals, such as, photography competitions. I know that photography competitions aren't everything. It doesn't mean anything in a way, but it is a nice feeling whenever you maybe get shortlisted or, win something. And also the prospect of working towards an exhibition as well. This is something, that I want to do. I know you've had an exhibition recently, and this is something which I think as photographers we should all aim towards, exhibiting something. That's what it's all about. It's all about, that physical print to me, and maybe a book. I think that is a great goal to have, is, that you would work towards a book, maybe exhibit first, and then, then exhibit again, and then start to get a real good collection of images for a book to, really mark that period of your life as a photographer. So certainly for me, that's what I'm working towards. The danger is that whenever you kind of finish a project, or say finish an exhibition or something like that, is that you don't know what to do next, that you feel as if you've finished something. And that's why it's really important to, keep being inspired. Otherwise, you could really hit a low point with your photography if you don't keep learning and we've just got to keep learning as photographers. It's so important, and keep, pushing forward.
This photograph, titled Lost, taken using my Leica Q2 monochrome, and it's part of a series of photographs called The Time Traveller. When I was a young boy, I imagined stories about a mysterious time traveller in a hat. As an adult, photography has been my way of telling those stories through still images. In some ways, this image offers more questions than it does answers. Why is he standing in the sea? What's wrong with his hand? This photograph has featured in a number of magazines, including the front cover of Black and White Photography magazine. It was shortlisted for British Photography Awards, and it received a Leica Master Shot Award. This image has took on a whole life of its own, and it's become almost irrelevant what I meant when I took the photograph. This can be the way when you're an artist, that other people interpret your photography in unexpected ways. My advice is just to let that happen. Avoid overly descriptive titles and let the photography speak for itself. I love the fact that you can see the agony here, even without seeing his face. The water around him, it's not calm. The sky is quite dark, but there's hope that maybe the storm is about to pass. I love having nice strong blacks and whites in my monochrome photography. The bandage, it gives a nice strong white to complement the dark blacks in his clothes and hat. Now this wasn't an easy image to take. Well, it was easy for me, but not for the time traveller. That agony that you see is real. The sea was freezing cold. He lost both of his shoes in that shoot. Maybe one day they'll be found. You just never know what the tide could bring.
Paul, your photography journey has been a great success thus far. Professional photographer, YouTube star, workshop instructor, photography mentor, and now you've got this new Monochrome Madness online course on your website store. Can you tell us just briefly about that?
Yeah, of course. So what I kind of wanted to do really was I wanted what I wish I had whenever I was, basically learning photography. And I wish at some point in the past I had had something to teach me a lot of the things which I know now. I've made so many stupid mistakes over the years, with my photography, and certainly, not kept strong with photography over the years. I was a photographer from a young age, but really, it took me till around about kind of the age of 50, really, to make all those mistakes and learn everything that I've learned, and then, get to this point. So what I wanted to do was, put this course where I'm teaching all of the things, not just to do, but also what not to do as well. And that's an online course where, people could go on there, and there's lots of videos of me giving instructions and things like that, as well as documents to support that. And it's something I'm really excited about, because it's easy, it's simple. People can do it at their own pace. So yeah, it's just like a really exciting thing for me to put that out there, and just really kind of share my knowledge with other people.
Wow, that sounds great. And it's self-driven. I could get it and go through it at my own pace, like you said?
Yeah. So it's not anything kind of like, it's not like a workshop or anything live with me. It will be, lesson 1, lesson 2, and then, maybe you leave it a while and then go on to lesson 3, and you can do it as many times as you want, just to really, just put that stuff in the mind so you remember all these things. And, there's basics there as well, but as well as some more advanced stuff. But at the same time, I think even whenever you've been into photography for such a long time, sometimes it's good just to get back to those basics again, and then just remind yourself of those, and actually how simple photography actually is. A lot of cameras these days, they've got so many automatic settings on them that it suddenly, sometimes things seem more of a mystery, because the camera is deciding all these things for you. And then it becomes this mystery as to what's actually going on when you go out taking photographs, and how it's exposed and all of that sort of thing. In actual fact, it's the simplest thing ever whenever it's explained right to somebody. So I've got a little bit of that in there as well. But in the main, it'll be to do with composition, lighting, and then, a whole bunch of tricks, how to make a master shot, which I think, we all want to know that. But, I've got some tips and tricks on that as well.
Well, that really spurs one follow-up question. What's next? Where does Paul Reid go from here?
I mean, I've just got to keep learning and keep getting better at my craft. It's no matter how good you think you are or how good I think I am, you can always keep learning. There's always things that you can learn. There's things we can learn from each other as photographers. I learn things even when I'm doing, the mentorship program. I've learned stuff from you because it's just, that's what we do. We bounce off each other as photographers, and it's really important to just, never think that you know everything and stay still and say, well, look, I'm as good as I'm ever going to get, because, it would get pretty boring if that was the case. So that for me, that's my main drive is just to keep getting better at photography and keep learning.
That brings us to the end of today's Black and White Bistro show. We hope you enjoyed meeting Paul Reid and his amazing black and white photography journey. To see more of his images, visit his gallery on Vero, share some likes, and consider following his captivating compositions in black and white. We'd like to thank Paul for joining us on today's show. If you did enjoy today's show, make sure to mark your calendars so you don't miss episode 13 coming exclusively on Vero on August 24, when we'll present another special guest artist from the Vero black and white photography community. And don't forget, if you're not shooting black and white, you're only seeing half the picture. Now remember to follow us, get out there, and create some great black and white photographs.